RPN is not responsible for the views, actions, statements, or opinions of its guests, advertisers, or even its viewers. The information on this program is not to be construed as medical or legal advice. An appearance on this program is not necessarily an endorsement, and as always, we encourage you to do your own research. Enjoy the show. Good evening, everyone. You're listening to Red Pill 78. As always, I am Zach the Corruption Detector, and this is another edition of Red Pill News for Saturday Night Livestream. I hope everyone's having a lovely night. We have a very special guest in the studio with us. Rob Weber. He is a congressional candidate for Ohio's 9th District. And we are going to be talking about some of the most important issues facing that part of Ohio. I'm sure you guys know that Les Wexner is not too far from there. And obviously, we know about the issues of human trafficking and so many other things taking place there. You may or may not know that the company that was recently raided in Ohio and Florida that's connected to the Ukrainegate scandal, obviously it was based right there. Rob knows a whole bunch of information about it. So we're going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about many of the other issues there in Ohio and, of course, by proxy, facing the entire country. Maybe we'll get into some specific bits of newsworthy stuff from the last couple of days. I'm sure Rob has opinions on the former SCOTUS, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, President Trump and his performance. But you'll have your chance to ask him questions in the second half of the show, so get your questions ready. Now, if you don't mind, please do sit back, relax, grab your popcorn, and we'll be right back after a very brief word from our sponsor. Hey guys, I want to talk to you very frankly about the increasing civil unrest we're seeing in America these days. You can't turn on the news without hearing about more riots, violence, looting, killings, lawlessness, and general mayhem in too many cities, and now it's creeping into the suburbs. Sadly, I think the worst is yet to come. This isn't stopping anytime soon. The political animosity in our country is unlike anything we've ever seen in our lifetime. It's escalating rapidly, and the crescendo could be very painful. Therefore, this will certainly be the greatest survival challenge we've ever faced. Don't feel bad if it seems that you're almost powerless to stop it. We're all in the same boat, and a lot of people feel that way. However, I want to focus your attention on what you can do to survive. Priority number one in times like this is to make sure you have enough food to eat. If and when the system falls apart, you're going to need it. And I'm not trying to scare you, I just want to prepare you. You see, those who know what's coming are using today to protect themselves and their loved ones from the uncertain future we all face. I know you're not willing to be a victim, but these days, anything can go wrong at any time. And that's why self-reliance and emergency preparedness are vital requirements, no matter who you are. If you know me, you know I fully endorse my Patriot Supply. They are the only source I personally use and trust to get through the tough times ahead, and you should too. Right now, you can save $100 on a full 4-week supply of delicious, nutritious meals your whole family will love. My Patriot Supply makes it easy to be prepared at all times, and saving $100 off a full 4-week supply of food is just too good a deal to pass up. The future is so uncertain. I urge you to go to preparewithredpill78.com and get ready now. Once again, that's preparewithredpill78.com. Do it now. Tomorrow might be too late. And remember, when you support my sponsors, you support this channel. All right, everyone. Thank you once again for joining us. Please join me in welcoming our guest for this evening, Rob Weber, congressional candidate for the 9th District of Ohio. Rob, how are you tonight, buddy?
Good evening, Zach, and all the listeners and viewers. Doing really well, thank you.
All right, man. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Well, before we get into any of the specific issues, obviously, I think it's a good idea for the audience to get to know you. It looks like you've already got quite a few fans in the audience. Obviously, JR's here hanging out, but other people are probably coming over from your Twitter profile. But let's get a sense for who Rob is. Why did you want to get involved in politics?
Well, what I'd say is, as a youth, my middle school years and high school years, I was very politically interested. Kind of like back then, there was no really such thing, but like a young Republican, if you will. I was very conservative. Obviously, I went to West Point, and so that I had that type of mentality and frame of mind. But it was really my years in the service between West Point and then serving in the Army as a junior officer. And one of the mantras, and it was actually part of the mission statement, was not just creating leaders of soldiers in the Army, but building people of character who would dedicate a lifetime of service to nation. So then fast forward about 25 years after my time in the service was over, and I really was looking at the condition of our country, looking at sort of the opposition from every direction that our president has faced. And I just said, I need to get into that fight and do the right thing and be one. I couldn't be on the sidelines anymore.
Well, obviously, we need good people in Washington. The swamp is pretty thick, and despite all of President Trump's best efforts, there's still a lot of people that I think need to be removed. Now, one thing that really, really surprised me, the candidate, or I guess the current congressman that you were running against, Marcy Kaptur, she's been there for over 3 decades. Is that right?
She's been there for basically 4 decades, literally 38 years. She was sworn in 1983. And while I don't think of myself as young, but I was literally 9 years old. She's been a congressperson since I was 9. And so 4 decades of not getting much of anything done.
I was going to say, can you point to any significant accomplishments that Congressman Captur might have taken care of while she was there in office?
The reality is in those 40 years, she literally only has 6 or 7 pieces of legislation passed. I guess the exact numbers is 8. Okay. Most of those were things like naming memorials or naming buildings, sort of what you might call just administrative patronage type of laws.
Right, right. Well, you know what's even more sad about that is that her record is even better than Joe Biden's, because I don't think he has that many bills from the 5 decades that he was there in Washington. So, one of the shocking things about her tenure there is something that is near and dear to my audience, specifically the issue of human trafficking. Ohio, and specifically that area of Ohio, has one of the worst records for human trafficking in the entire country. What can you tell us about that?
Sure. Well, again, the district stretches from the northwestern corner of Ohio, Toledo, all the way along the lake to Cleveland, which is about central Ohio on the lake as far as that goes. But there's a major turnpike interstate called I-80. That corridor that runs east-west across the northern part of the state that ends up going through both Cleveland and Toledo is a major trafficking thoroughfare. And the reality, it starts with Toledo's geographic location. It is, and I think with trafficking, is not only an interstate issue, it's an international issue. Yeah. So it's boundaries. So they say when someone's abducted, if you don't find them within 3 hours, odds are you'll never will. Trafficking is the same concept, that once the victim is out of the state or across the boundary, the odds of being caught go down exponentially. So Toledo is about an hour to the west of Toledo is the Indiana border. Literally 15 minutes to the north is Michigan border. Obviously, Toledo is literally on Lake Erie, so you have access to boats and shipping. And then lastly, if you go north into Michigan, about an hour north is Detroit. And as most people know, there's the international border with Canada there. So that geographic crossroads, and there's also a major north-south route, I-75. So because of all that, Toledo is a hotbed. The other reason, and this I think more goes to the culture that's been created by current political leadership at local levels, but up including at the congressional level, is sadly and unfortunately, Toledo is what I would call it just on the down and outs on the social economic scale. Not all of it, but large portions of Toledo are just very inner city, downtrodden, suppressed type of economy. People that don't have good families, the nuclear family dynamic isn't there, and so that when people go missing, there isn't a family support structure looking for them. There isn't necessarily the willingness to report the loss. And like I said, Toledo has economically been left behind. Those factors all create why this Northwest Ohio is a hotbed of trafficking.
Well, and this has been something that has been documented for quite some time, right? I mean, this isn't just something that the authorities are just figuring out in recent years, I would imagine.
No, that is correct. This is well known. It's long-standing. I believe it has gotten worse over the years. My understanding, it was first, to be honest, most people who've become awakened to this major issue of trafficking, there's a reason. Most people have a reason how they get introduced to it. Mine was that my stepdaughter at the time was studying social work and was working as a social worker out of state, and so she was dealing with these issues. And so she kind of brought up and said, "Hey, Mom and Dad, you probably don't know this, but you guys live literally right in the heart and center of the American Human Trafficking Network." And I literally, my jaw hit the floor. I said, "What are you talking about?" So at least for a decade, going back about a decade, I could say that Toledo was literally America's #1 trafficking center, and internationally one of the top few. It is somewhat improved more recently, maybe because other places have just stepped up in that. But yes, it's a well-known thing. But interestingly, between the politicians not wanting to talk about it, the law enforcement not really emphasizing it, it doesn't seem like much is getting done to solve the problem.
And why do you think that is? Do you think it's an issue of who is going missing from the local area, these socioeconomically disadvantaged people, or is it something more overt, like corruption, payoffs, things like that?
I think it's a combination of sort of all of the above. There are factors. Again, there's a reason why places end up becoming, trafficking networks or centers. They prey on the weakest people, the most vulnerable people. That clearly is a factor. When it comes to law enforcement, I think they relatively, local law enforcement do the best they can, but they're limited because the reality is the second the crime crosses state lines, you get into jurisdictional issues and you get into federal law enforcement issues. And the court, and obviously criminals know this, so they do this strategically on purpose to make it difficult to get caught. So I think those are the issues. And then lastly, though, I think politicians are afraid to take this issue on. I think they're afraid to even say the words. They don't want to be labeled conspiracy theorists, which is a bunch of bunk. This is a genuine, real life issue in America, maybe one of the primary issues, as even as much or more so than the drug problem that everybody's willing to talk about, as well as there is a lot of corruption behind it. There's a lot of money laundering behind it, and as we know, these career politicians, whether I'm not suggesting they're directly involved in human trafficking, but we know that you can't be worth hundreds of millions of dollars on a government salary for your entire career, and you're maintaining 2 residences, one back home in your home state and one in Washington. So I think all of those factors combined explains why nothing's getting done on it.
All right. And how are Marcy Kaptur's finances looking?
Well, on that note, I've done research. Marcy Kaptur has been smart enough to make sure that her personal assets that are in her name show to be a legitimate amount that you would expect for a government servant with limited income. That's not to say that there aren't ways of hiding money or putting it in family members' names or other people's names. Obviously, Joe Biden wasn't smart enough because he used someone with Hunter, his son, Hunter Biden, who shared the last name, and his brother, Joe Biden's brother, notoriously and famously or infamously came into millions and millions and millions of dollars. But on that level, I'm not suggesting there isn't a direct link to Marcy Kaptur personally.
So her husband isn't a multimillionaire?
Right. You don't know about any of those relationships. I don't believe she's married, but the reality of it is any of these people, she's been in for 4 decades. She's establishment as it gets. They know how the game works.
Absolutely. Now, clearly this is also an issue that's near and dear to President Trump's heart. We're speaking about the idea of national borders. Part of building the wall, a huge part of that, is to stop the flow of human trafficking through that southern border. And obviously, that's still a big issue up at the northern border. I mean, Michigan, very porous. You get up to the Upper Peninsula, it's pretty easy to sneak across the border. I think it's less likely that you're going to have a lot of human trafficking going on up there, because if a person goes missing, with it being such a sparse population, it's a lot easier for people to take notice. But you take a boat right there from Lake Erie, and then you can very easily veer off into Canada and, then just, slip away into nothing. Is this something that you would potentially challenge Congressman Captur on? Are you guys going to be able to debate on this stuff?
Well, in fact, I was just interviewed by one of the major local papers, the Sandusky Register, and we did a video interview. And part of that, the question was asked, and I accepted. So they're going to present her office with that. They traditionally put on a actual debate setting type of event, and we're waiting to see. We welcome the opportunity to debate her in front of the public, and we'll see if her and her office accept.
All right. Well, I would be definitely interested in seeing that. Going back to Joe Biden, and I mentioned Les Wexner earlier. Obviously, Les Wexner, his connection to Jeffrey Epstein, he has been accused of using his position as the CEO of L Brands, being in charge of Victoria's Secret, of helping to facilitate Jeffrey Epstein's crimes, bringing in models through Victoria's Secret. And I thought it was an interesting coincidence that you have this issue with human trafficking, specifically in Ohio, and you have Les Wexner being somewhat of a philanthropist, his money and influence being all over the place there throughout Ohio. Has Les Wexner and his role in any of this ever come up? I mean, is that something that Ohio residents ever think about?
Well, the name Les Wexner in that regard really just surfaced with the Jeffrey Epstein that broke last year. So we know he runs a big fashion sort of mogul and industry, if you will. There are in Columbus, which is central in the state for our nationwide viewers, has a horrific heroin problem. And again, it also, because there's a lot of highway transportation, east, west, north, south. So, and that comes in some of those trafficking and the drugs. The addictions are often used as a way to get the people caught in the trap so they can be trafficked. But to be honest, Les Wexner's involvement really surfaced with Epstein. Haven't ever heard anything about that specifically, other than the things you can infer or the innuendo. Of course, the other thing that I think has been established as fact is Jeffrey Epstein's New York City brownstone, or I use the word townhome for us regular Midwest folks, was in fact largely gifted to him by Les Wexner. Something worth, I believe it was $80-some million townhome in New York City. So obviously there's a connection there, and you don't just do something like that because he's your pal. So the indirect, or in the lawyer world, we call it circumstantial evidence. As an example, if I see you walking across the yard, the judges all give this as an example, walking across the yard, I know you did it. If it snowed and I come out and see fresh footprints in the snow, I can, through indirect evidence or circumstantial evidence, I can conclude someone walked by in the yard in the snow. So the circumstantial connection is pretty strong.
Now, this is actually something we didn't get to, but in your career after West Point, you went to school there in Ohio, and you did become a lawyer?
That's correct. I grew up an Ohio boy, Midwest through and through, Buckeye through and through. So as much as I was, of course, very proud to go to West Point, I did also satisfy or accomplish one of my lifelong dreams, if you will. I did go to Ohio State University College of Law, which I'm very proud of, and I got to be a Buckeye as an older student after the Army years, but that was great. And then I did, in fact, of course, become a lawyer. I'm very proud. I picked a specialty of law that I'm very proud of. Not that there's anything wrong with business lawyers, and businesses need representation too, but I'm very proud. I don't represent $1 million or $1 billion corporations. I've always represented individual people, helping them find solutions to their problems. I've tried many, many jury trials. I have that kind of advocacy experience many of them under very high pressure, high stress type of situations with high stakes outcomes. I feel those are skills that will well serve me should I have the privilege of representing the 9th District. Those trial lawyer advocacy type of skills. You see Jim Jordan sort of cross-examine witnesses on the Judiciary and Oversight Committee, and I've done thousands of cross-examinations in my career. Those skills are applicable.
All right, good stuff. Now, if you were to be elected, what do you think are the biggest issues facing Ohio? And then let's also take it to a macro level and say, what are the biggest issues facing the country?
Well, specific to Ohio, and I think it applies to the country too, but Ohio and my 9th District, which we call Ohio's North Coast along the lake, good quality, high-paying jobs. NAFTA signed in 1994 thanks to Bill Clinton, and then in the 2001, when China was admitted to the World Trade Organization, those two situations devastated our economy, our jobs. I believe to just NAFTA alone, they attribute 50,000 auto industry related jobs. Those are union jobs, high paying jobs. You can more than take care of a family. Left Ohio. Ohio also is disproportionately, it's the number 6 state in the union that was adversely affected by this job mass exodus. So that's my number one goal, is creating policies or creating conditions that are favorable, that encourage, whether it be large corporations, companies, small business owners, but bringing jobs back to the states. A specific example, and maybe we'll talk about it more, but recently the opportunity to repair and replace NAFTA came, and it was called the Usmca trade agreement. United States, Mexico, and Canada. It replaced NAFTA. It will, in fact, bring many good manufacturing jobs back. The importance or relevance of what I was going to talk about on that is that 90% of Democrats, including Nancy Pelosi herself, Madam Speaker, and 99% of union men and women wanted USMCA passed. Mm-hmm. There was only about 40 plus or minus congressmen out of the 435 seats, so less than 10%, voted no on it. Marcy Kaptur voted no on the USMCA deal, and she followed the lead of AOC and the socialist wing of the Democrat Party, and they had their reasons for voting no, and Marcy Kaptur fell in line behind a freshman congressperson and not supporting her union base that had donated over the years hundreds of thousands of dollars, and all those hardworking men and women that America's upon whose backs America is built. So that's one. The second one I would say is supporting our law enforcement. I never thought in my naive life that would become a political issue.
Yeah.
For me, Zach, it is not a political issue. It's the way I was raised. It's my core values, my fundamental values. It's going to West Point and serving in the Army, sort of that brotherhood and sisterhood of uniformed services. And it's just a respect for authority and law enforcement. But it clearly has, after what's happened this year, it is a political issue. I compliment law enforcement for breaking old habits of, traditionally supporting and endorsing Democrat candidates. The law enforcement community is realizing who really supports them and stands behind them. I am very proud. I was formally endorsed, so not just supported, but formally endorsed by the Toledo Police Command. First time in modern history that they endorsed a Republican candidate for Congress. So that's very proud. And then lastly, what an issue, and again, I think it's nationwide too, is energy independence for the United States of America. President Trump is the first president that has brought us to a net gain on exports versus imports. So the first time in history. That does involve, but with that, you have to balance environmental factors. It's not all or nothing. You can balance and maintain viable environmental policies and dynamics while maintaining America's energy independence. As an example, here in the 9th District in Ohio, we have Davis-Besse, which is a nuclear power plant. Nuclear is the best source of energy. It's the most efficient source of energy. It's the cleanest source of energy, so very pro-environmental. It also very important for the electrical grid. It's what I'm using a lay term, but it's the most reliable source of energy. The next closest is literally half as reliable as nuclear, meaning it's going to support the electric grid. We're not going to have outages or rolling brownouts like they do in California. So very important. There's another issue that maybe later on we can take up. There's a big push in Ohio right now about wind energy, windmills, or I guess wind turbines. They want to put those on Lake Erie. The Democrats are pushing it at the state level as well as at the congressional level. Marcy Kaptur has voiced her support of this project. And I will just tell you that not only is wind energy, this is across the nation in general. There are exceptions for certain locations and setups, but in general, wind energy is a net loser, meaning it costs more money to build, operate, and then maintain. They're notoriously difficult for breakdowns and expensive, as well as wind is inconsistent than it does in energy it produces. But they're particularly on Lake Erie here on our great North Coast, they are an environmental disaster, and I can get into the details of that later.
Well, it's a hazard for animals, too. Flocks of migrating birds. I mean, I've seen it on a number of occasions.
Well, so that great example, sort of unknown, we have this hidden, the lake is a gem that if we take it for granted because we live on it, but then I have friends in Nebraska that come up here every Labor Day, and they treat Lake Erie like it's the Mecca. So we have another one. We are the #2 migratory bird flyway, particularly from what we call the Lake Erie Islands area out to Toledo in North America, besides the Great Mississippi Flyway. So all those migratory birds would be adversely affected. We also have seen the what's the word? Well, the redevelopment. That's not the right word, but the redevelopment and success of bald eagles along the lake. We now have the #1 area for bald eagles in Ottawa County. Those would be adversely affected. You also have our fishery, that you don't know what the effect on that would be. You have genuine noise pollution that they would cause and don't know what all the effects of all the electricity going through it. Lastly, you have what I will just sort of call site pollution or the aesthetic effect. We have, like any shoreline, a massive social recreational industry, all different kinds, parks, but marinas, all all sorts of things that would be adversely affected by the windmills on the lake. So it is truly an environmental disaster.
The Great Lakes region is gorgeous. I've been there many, many times, and the idea of seeing the shoreline dotted with a bunch of big, ugly windmills is just abhorrent to me. I don't know many people that think that's a good idea. Now, just a little bit of housekeeping here, Rob. I forgot to mention at the beginning of the show, you are actually going to be joining JR and I on September 29th. I'm going to be hosting a special live stream. We're going to be covering the planned debate between President Trump and Joe Biden. I say planned because we don't necessarily believe it's actually going to happen. But I just wanted to let everybody in the audience know that Rob is going to be there in person. So if you live in the Ohio area, you are a constituent, you'll have the opportunity to come there and ask him questions, maybe shake his hand in person, and hopefully you guys will have some other things to ask him after tonight. Also want to say, I don't know what you're doing on Monday, but President Trump has the rally in Toledo, and JR and I are going to be there. He pulled some strings, I guess, and we got some VIP passes. We're going to be right behind POTUS for the actual speech at the rally. I'm super stoked because this is my first ever Trump rally that I've ever been able to go to, and to be able to be that close, man, I'm super excited. Are you going to be there too?
I plan on being there, and that is fantastic that you're getting to go. If you say it's your first President Trump rally, it will be electrifying. He is unlike anything you've ever seen. You will feel the energy. If you're a big sports fan, but you like college football or pro football, think of that energy times 10. That's what he's like. Good for you.
I mean, I've watched, I don't know, hundreds of them by now at this point, just from home, and it's an emotional experience just watching it through TV. I mean, he has a public demeanor unlike any politician that I've ever seen. I've been in politics myself many years ago, and by and large, these people that are career politicians, will say, they are carefully measured because they are thinking at every moment about what looks good and what is going to get them elected. Not everybody gets involved because they have a vested interest in what's best for their constituents and what's best for their state or their city. So I commend you for that. But President Trump, I mean, he's an unusual guy because he was totally set up. He was a multimillionaire. He had self-sustaining companies and properties. He didn't need to get into politics at this late age, and he sacrificed so much by becoming president of the United States. And it's clear that he did it because he loves America. And because of that, just to be able to see him in front of a crowd, I mean, the zingers and, all of the energy. It is the most incredible thing I can possibly imagine. So I'm super excited for that. I also wanted to ask you about this raid on Igor Kolomoisky's company. Was the Privat Group, but the business that was actually raided, I guess, was a subsidiary of that. And I'm drawing a blank on the name. I've got it over here someplace. But they had offices in Miami and Optima it is. Offices in Miami and then also in Cleveland. What can you tell us about that raid? So
now it's probably been 3 or 4 weeks ago. I believe it happened in the calendar month of August at some point. Cleveland and Miami were raided. It was by the FBI. It was specifically targeted to Ukrainian money laundering operations, and that's what they were doing in Cleveland. I don't know all the details in Miami, but this Optima company that you reference had literally more than a handful. So I say a dozen or two sort of Optima LLC, Optima One LLC, etc. Optima was always in the name. So they set up a whole sort of shell company type of dynamic. And in Cleveland, they were laundering money through purchase of major commercial real estate. This Optima and its other subsidiaries owned many large, big-time downtown sort of proverbial skyscrapers in Cleveland, worth hundreds of millions of dollars. So I've followed the Ukrainian, and I'll let you lead through that, but the Ukrainian corruption saga, if you will, and how a lot of American politicians were involved, including famously, Joe Biden and Hunter Biden, his son. We all know, we've all seen, I think, the video. I just can't believe the arrogance where Joe Biden, after the fact, is on and braggartly talks about getting the prosecutor fired because they were investigating Burisma, and looks at his watch and says, well, the plane leaves in 6 hours, and so you can figure it out whether you want your $1 billion. But so I knew all the dots, had them largely connected. It was surprising to me to find out that, lo and behold, the Ukraine's #1 money laundering operation internationally is right here in Cleveland, Ohio, which is only 2 hours away from Marcy Kaptur's home of Toledo. And as we probably know, or some of your guests may know, and you and I have talked about it, Marcy Kaptur is the #1 advocate for the Ukraine in Congress. She is the co-founder and co-chairman of what they call the Ukrainian caucus. It's not a committee, but it's a caucus that focuses on Ukrainian specific issues. So at some point when you draw all the connections and all the dots and say it's too close to home to be coincidental.
What kinds of things has Marcy Kaptur done with that caucus? I mean, has she made, I don't know, business arrangements between the people of Ukraine and the people of Ohio? I mean, surely there must be some benefit for her constituents.
I don't think there is any benefit for her constituents, truth be told. There isn't any direct business connections. There isn't like she's bringing foreign business into the state of Ohio and using that as a lack of a better word, sister economic cities that they do. And sure, there's an economic reason for it. There is not. Marcy Kaptur claims that she has Ukrainian/Polish ancestry, and as many people might know, especially with the World War I and World War II eras, the borders tended to shift legitimately. She sort of sometimes calls herself Polish, sometimes Ukrainian, depending on how the situation serves. But it's her own personal interest. She takes it up, and I don't understand. And I'm just a regular guy here. I don't understand why the interest is, especially going back to when her tenure started in 1983. Is that in 1983? Is the Ukraine was not even anything on anyone's conversation. Mm-hmm. So it's very interesting that at such an early point, her interest had developed, and sort of she holds herself out as the country's foremost expert in Ukrainian politics. She says she knows everybody that has been in power, that is in power, and that will be in power in the future in the Ukraine.
That's a bold statement. Do you know if she was at all involved with that transition of power that took place during the Orange Revolution a couple years ago, where Joe Biden was so intricately involved in that transfer?
Well, it's great that you bring that up. That our government and our shadow components of our government has its fingerprints all over that, and there is all sorts of not necessarily made public or unclassified yet, but it's all over there. And what I can say is this: Joe Biden has held himself out, again, incredulously to the public as being right in the middle of all that and all of the corruption and whatnot. But as Marcy Kaptur and the interest that she has shown, her involvement in it, the level of information and intelligence that she receives as a congressman, there's no possible way she's not well aware, at the most innocent, well aware of what's going on over there, both in politics, both with its, the Ukraine is literally top 2 or 3 most corrupt cultures and societies in the world, right up there with some of the very corrupt African nations where basically corruption is their way of doing business. There's no way when you're given privy to that level of access to information that she's not aware of what's going on.
Well, this is an assignment for everybody in the audience. If you would like to dig on Marcy Kaptur and people like Victoria Nuland, people like, all of everybody from Ukraine and the embassy there that was perhaps involved in the impeachment hoax that we just went through. I just did that report on Norm Eisen and the Purple Revolution, which is taking place in the United States right now. If there are connections between Marcy Kaptur and any of those people, they're going to become pretty obvious. And then we could also look into her campaign contributions. It would be great to know if that Optima, if any of those various Optima LLCs had been donating to her on a regular basis. I just need to say thank you very much to Catherine for that donation on PayPal. Thank you very much, Catherine. I appreciate that. So one of the issues that I know is near and dear to my viewers' hearts is obviously the Second Amendment. I think if it weren't for the Second Amendment, then we probably wouldn't be in the position that we're in right now. I mean, things would be a lot worse. We would probably be a lot farther down the rabbit hole in terms of whatever the shadow government, the cabal, whatever you wanted to call them, their plans to kind of disarm us and do away with the Constitution. There was a specific bill that HR 5717, the Gun Violence Prevention and Safety Act. How does that affect people, or would it affect people? I've never even heard of it specifically.
So, number one, my background, I am as big of an advocate for our Second Amendment rights as literally exists. And that comes from literally my family and my culture and upbringing. It's a joke, and they always say behind every joke there's truth. I was literally a member of the NRA before I was baptized, and I was baptized at 10 days old. I have been a life member of the NRA since 1975. I grew up in a hunting, sportsman, fishing, shooting type of family, and culminating even in at West Point. I was the captain of the skeet and trap team, the shotgun shooting team while I was there, and I was a collegiate national champion in trap one year. So I have those values instilled in me and embedded in me. So this current, people want to say, oh, the right, the conservatives always overplay the gun, they're not really going to take your guns. And I'll flip it back around. Beto O'Rourke on camera famously said, I'm coming to take your guns. So yes, they will, and yes, they are.
No mistake.
And in fact, under a Biden administration, Beto O'Rourke will be in charge of their gun control agenda. It's already been stated and made clear. Just like AOC will be in charge of their energy or lack of energy culture with their Green New Deal. So currently pending in Congress right now, it hasn't been acted on, and that's a reason, is a bill. It's in the House of Representatives. It's captioned HR 5717. Which Marcy Kaptur clearly supports any gun control legislation. She's been on the record of that. This bill is extreme. They're not going to try to take it to vote. They could get it passed in the House right now. They have the votes. Right. Obviously, it would die in the Senate. But it's there. It's teed up, if you will. And from their perspective, if they were to take back, if they were to win the presidency this year, which also, goes hand in hand. If Joe Biden wins the presidency, I'm not suggesting I think that's the outcome that I expect, certainly not without a bunch of cheating. But if it happened, they clearly would take back the Senate. And then a law like this would be immediately passed, immediately. What it does, the short version, and people have heard this before, is it outlaws and makes illegal any and all semi-automatic firearms. So the definition that it includes, it uses these words, assault and whatever, but the definitions themselves are semi-automatic. So number one, on long guns or shotguns or rifles, any rifle or that type of gun that you can shoot repetitively with the multiple squeezes of the trigger will be outlawed. So it really does almost eliminate most guns, except for single fire guns and bolt action style guns. Where it's really scary though, and it's buried and hidden, they don't advertise this or promote it, it will in effect make almost all handguns illegal by the virtue, again, of the definition, semi-automatic. So revolvers, you squeeze the trigger and you have 6 rounds, in most revolvers. So other than the old-fashioned cowboy handguns that were single action, and you see them fire like this because it was a single action weapon, or single shot handguns, which don't really exist in today's world.
Muzzle loaders.
Yep, and they're so essentially make all handguns illegal, and that bill is waiting there and teed up. And should they take back the Senate and take the presidency, they'll drop that in a heartbeat.
Well, that's obviously something that we can't allow to happen. I need to say one more thank you real quick. Let me just get that pulled back up. Michelle, thank you very much, Michelle. Appreciate that donation. So what's your stance on red flag laws? Because this is one thing that, from one point of view, if you've got somebody who is not in control of their own faculties, many people would argue that they should not be allowed to own guns of any kind. But then you have people who say, a mental illness is just an illness of the brain in the same way that, cancer of the lungs is just an illness of your lungs. And so it's kind of a divisive issue. What is your stance on red flag laws?
So I'm adamantly against red flag laws in general, but as they currently are presented or as they're currently pitched. The danger, the absolute danger with them, and it's a constitutional right, is that in the United States of America, we have the ability of being innocent until proven guilty. Red flag laws inherently reverse that burden of proof. And in essence, you are guilty until you prove yourself innocent. Why that's so deadly dangerous is, in today's world, a domestic dispute, an ex-spouse, an ex-girlfriend or boyfriend, a neighbor that doesn't like you, you have the old proverbial fence dispute. Anybody, anywhere decides they don't like person X, calls in a complaint, makes up a story, the law enforcement comes, takes all the firearms, raids the home, and places the burden of proof on that person, makes them pay for the legal fees, go through all that, and all of the damage that comes with it. That is why they are so deadly dangerous. Am I saying that I want people that have mental illness or mental handicaps and not their full faculties in possession of dangerous firearms? Absolutely not. But the way the current red flag laws are situated are such that they're against our constitutional rights, and they're very dangerous.
All right, that was perfect. Okay, so going back to the USMCA, Marcy Kaptur voting down the USMCA, what was the response from the people in Ohio? Because, obviously, with NAFTA, the United States just bled jobs. We sent them to Mexico. We sent them to China. Bill Clinton presented it as something that was going to be great for America. It was going to create all of this economic opportunity, and it did create a lot of economic opportunity for everyone but the American public. So I would think that if your congressman is against bringing jobs back to your state, something that is clearly sorely needed in Ohio, that would be something that the people of Ohio would be wanting to get behind. Did they fall in line with Marcy Kaptur, or was there any outrage?
Well, it brings up, I guess, 2 issues. Is one, the people that are aware of it, which is usually inside the union community and manufacturing, hardworking blue-collar style jobs, we're upset. But what I will tell you, the second issue that comes with that is, in a technical matter, the congressman's votes are, in theory, public record. The reality is outside of what I call political junkies, the average public doesn't know where and how to find these votes. And so the reality is, and I'm encountering, even when I encounter union people, and it is all over America, by the way, that are switching to vote Republican and conservative, and they've woken up. When I inform them of this fact, they say, oh, well, I was going to vote Republican anyway, but I had no idea she voted no on that. So the transparency is just not there. And I think so not many people know, and that's part of my job, my campaign's job, and my support network of supporters is to get that word out. But I think it also exposes another very bad problem is so many of these legislators hide behind people not knowing how they vote. And that's something that I've thought long and hard about. And I don't know if I have a black and white answer, but the point of it is I am running on a campaign of transparency, and that when I go to Congress, I will make public my vote record so that people know how I'm voting, what the issues are, and where I stand on them. Now, as the laws are currently, it's a little tricky because these, we don't have one subject matter laws, and you can get sometimes some weird votes because of some pork that's added to a bill that sounds really good, but then they throw on a bunch of junk. But end of the day, I will pledge to the 9th District that I will make my votes transparent and public knowledge in an easy way that's accessible for people to find it, as well as, and if I do get weird outcomes that don't make proverbial sense, then I'll put the explanation out there. Well, I didn't vote for this farm bill, which I would support normally, but because they added X, Y, and Z pork to it, and I couldn't support that aspect. So that's the best answer.
Yeah. So I just need to say thank you to the Spicy Conservative. Thank you very much for that donation on Cash App, Spicy Conservative. So, Rob, I've put your website into the chat a couple of times, Rob Weber for Congress, and it is also in the description of the video below. How is the campaign going? I mean, what can we do to help you if we've got viewers in the audience who are from Ohio and they want to get involved in the campaign?
Well, so on the national level, following the Facebook page, Rob, which has the same nomenclature, Rob Weber for Congress, following, liking it, being actively involved in that, and same as the Twitter, which I marketed in such a way it's a little edgier. That has the handle @WestPointWeber. Obviously, we need financial support, and thank you for bringing that up, Zach. That can be done at the actual website, robweberforcongress.com. We have received some contributions from national people, I think through social media, including at least one was through your show. So I'm grateful for that, one of your audience members. But here locally in Ohio, they can send an email through the website. We are continuously building our army of volunteers. We've got ground troops and soldiers on the ground, so to speak, and we're running sort of a really good grassroots campaign. Very proud that we're running a non-corporate, non-PAC campaign. I am not part of the establishment. I am not a career politician, and nor will I ever be, should I be blessed and have the privilege to represent the state of Ohio. But so we're running that kind of campaign, and we're keeping truly our contributions from individual people and keeping those people's interests at heart.
Well, I really like to hear that. Are you doing any public outreach yourself? You going door to door? Are you holding any events?
We do events almost essentially on a daily basis, even with COVID. What has not happened, and I think this is pretty common, depending on where you're at, but at least in Ohio, sort of your traditional fairs and festival style summertime events or even fall festivals are not happening to the degree, but smaller events, group or subject matter specific events. I have volunteers that door knock on a consistent basis. In that regard, I am working very favorably in general up and down the district with the Trump 2020 campaign team, and we overlap resources. I personally door knock on occasion. I know it's very important for the public to see me at that level. It's also very good leadership for my supporters that the good officer leads from the front, and he's not willing to send his soldiers to do anything that he won't do himself.
Absolutely.
So kind of all of the above. We're doing all aspects of outreach.
All right, good. I like to hear that. So 1 second. I wanted to get the Zoom link ready here. We are about to open up the phones here in just a few minutes. But was there any other specific issues that you think are prescient there in Ohio? Obviously, we have a lot going on in the country. I don't know if there is the same level of unrest happening in Ohio as, say, we've seen in the Pacific Northwest. I know that there has been some demonstrations. I think that at Kent State University, there was at least one night of unrest. Have you seen anything like that taking place in Ohio?
Well, and thank goodness for Ohio and most of the country, not to the extremes of Chicago or Minneapolis or Portland and Seattle. But we did earlier on this year in the major cities, including Cleveland, which is its suburbs are in the district, as well as out in Toledo. But a good portion of Cleveland was significantly damaged. When we go in, my wife and I go into Cleveland or through campaigning now, there are still many first floor storefronts that are still to this day boarded up and have not been repaired. Businesses have gone out of business because of it, very sadly. So we had that. They haven't, the riots, the so-called peaceful protests that destroy everything in sight have not sustained, and that's good. We know that the left this is orchestrated. This is not random occurrences. This is orchestrated. It's controlled. It's financed. There's money flow to it. We know there's going to be shenanigans between now and the election day. They're doing it on purpose. One thing on that note, I encourage voters, and I don't know all the state's laws, but I think they're all somewhat analogous and similar. We're encouraging people to vote in person and to do so via the early voting window. And for most, in Ohio at least, what it means is instead of going to your local poll at the church or at the school or the library around the corner, you actually have to go to your county's Board of Elections, which, depending on where you live and how urban it is, can be somewhat of an inconvenience. For at least 3 of the counties in my district, it's very rural, it's very small, easy. But I think in-person voting is the most secure and safe, and to ensure that your vote gets counted, as well as if you go early, 2 things. You're, one, not going to encounter November 3rd, election day lines with the COVID social distancing, as well as you're not going to take the risk that there's going to be orchestrated protests and riots that are going to try to deter conservatives, elderly people from coming out and voting. And I fully expect that. They're going to try to make it very difficult for the public to vote on November 3rd. Also, traditionally, Republicans have that old-fashioned mentality, myself included, until I've trained myself to do different, is they like to vote in person on November 3rd. Mm-hmm. I would suggest to all of your viewership this year, with so many uncertainties and variables out of our control, that is a risky proposition, and your vote is needed, it's important, and to ensure that it gets counted, go in person, but go early, and you'll save yourself waiting in line.
What about Governor Mike DeWine? There is a recall effort for him right now, and I know there's been a bit of controversy with regards to his handling of the beer bug situation, if you will.
So that's a sort of tough topic for me.
Okay.
I will answer very honestly. I do believe, so first off, armchair quarterback. Pretty much any situation you can nitpick and as I used to say, my father said, sharpshoot someone's performance, and certainly Governor DeWine's is ripe for being sharp shot. But I do believe that he, in his mind, thinks he's doing what's right for the state. He had a very suspect person in charge of the health department that it has now since resigned or been replaced. That had very suspect background with very far left liberal connections. That is somewhat shocking that a Republican governor would have put that person, Amy Acton, in that position to begin with. And some of the logic behind the policies that he's implemented don't necessarily, the dots don't connect. But in general, I do believe he thinks he's doing what's best, and so Ohioans just have to react and take that into consideration come his next election in 22.
All right. And are you doing any outreach or maybe teaming up with any other congressional candidates there in Ohio? I happen to have another congressional candidate on, or maybe he's a state senator. I can't remember exactly what he was running for, but he's running for Congress. I'm pretty sure. Mark Pakita. He was on just a couple weeks ago, and I just want to full disclosure. I don't live in Ohio. I just happen to have gotten in touch with people from Ohio, so it's worked out in my favor. But yeah, Mark was a great guy, and I was hoping you guys might hook up and maybe work together somehow.
So on that, one, as they always say, right? Pretty much, I think almost every time in history, the presidency is won with and through Ohio, meaning whichever way Ohio goes, so goes the presidency. So maybe there's a reason why Ohio is in fact a hotbed for at least presidential year elections. So that's great, and glad to be living in it and be part of it. I do know of Mark Pakita. He's in fact plans on running for United States Senate in 22.
Yeah.
So down the road. So he's starting his campaign early. He's a conservative. I don't know a lot about him. We have been in contact. He has helped me through social media, so I'm very grateful for that. And so in those regards, we're working together. At the U.S. Congress level, because the districts are so geographically inherently they don't overlap. Everybody really is running their own campaigns. I am cooperating, I think, in a collegial way with some of the state reps or state senators, and we've been working together. And there's clearly overlap in those districts. But your point, though, that I would like to bring up is this, and we're seeing it. Everyone understands on your show the importance of taking back the House of Representatives, right? The president can't really he can do executive orders. He's still accomplishing an amazing amount of things. But the reality is he's handcuffed because of Nancy Pelosi controlling the House, and she won't bring anything to vote. So with that, it's easy. And this is a name that's, superstar famous here in Ohio, but also is a national name. It's easy and fun to contribute to Jim Jordan, who's a friend of mine and is a mutual supporter. And, he's a rock star, and he was sort of one of my political heroes as I was starting to get specifically interested. But everyone likes yeah, everybody, right? And I would say he's the number one advocate for our president. And that's a role that he serves, and he takes it on, and he takes a lot of scrutiny and heat for it. And God bless him and his wife. They've been through it. And you need champions like that, which is what I want to be as well, and to give him another ally who will stand strong for the president. But it's easy and fun to contribute to a rock star like that. But the reality is the Jim Jordans of this world are not going to be able to pass a single law unless we control the House. And I know I'm kind of taking it through sort of step by step in an engineering way, but we're dealing with this issue. We can't take back the House unless we support candidates that are running against Democrats. You can't just support your Republican incumbents. You've got to support the candidates that are willing to take on the Democrats. And there's to be comfortable, we need to flip 30 or 40 seats. We technically need to flip about 20 to have a one vote margin, which is not enough. So my district is a tough district. It's an index. You probably understand these words. It's index minus 13 or 14, but it is not one of the not attainable urban areas like Cleveland and Columbus that they have indexes of minus 30 and minus 40. So we're not the closest, but we are in the ballpark. And so with that, I need to encourage people in my district, outside my district in Ohio, and nationally to support candidates like myself that are taking on incumbents. Now, it goes both ways. Marcy Kaptur is entrenched, at least in the Toledo portion of the district that's been there for 40 years. She is a household name, and that's just credibility acknowledging that. real quick, the opposite in Cleveland, which has just recently been brought into that district through gerrymandering, it's a very different dynamic. But she's a household name. But on the other hand, she's 75 years old. She's been there for 38 years. She's never taken a position of leadership. She's never chaired a committee. She's not a brand name the way Pelosi and Biden and Schumer and Feinstein, who she has more tenure than all of them are. So she's vulnerable. The reality is she's vulnerable. She can't be there much longer should she win. And people frankly see that the lack of results. So this is a campaign that's ripe for the taking this year. There is overwhelming, not just amongst conservatives, there is a sentiment out there that I am picking up through secondhand feedback, through personal feedback, through other candidates, that there is a consensus of sort of this idea, Marcy's got to go. It's time for her to go. She's had her share on the stage. So that's the comment I have about other races.
Well, I mean, there's a couple of things at play here, in my opinion. Obviously, nearly 4 decades in that seat without nary an accomplishment to point to, but also the changing tide in America today. I did a story the other night on African-American voters. Something like 85% of them now say they want an increased police presence on the streets, namely because of all the rioting and the unrest that has taken place in many of these urban areas, these metropolitan areas. The Democrats have turned away from public safety. They've turned away from their constituents. They have allowed cities to burn. They've allowed businesses to be boarded up, to just entire economies of scale to crush and crumble beneath their feet. And people are seeing this as the new Democratic Party, or perhaps, maybe they're seeing the Democrat Party for what it always was, and now they're realizing that that's not who they are. And they're interested in getting somebody into office who's actually going to be interested in helping them. So I think that your chances are probably a lot better than they would have been at, in elections past.
So if I can, real quick, an administrative plug for the people out, your audience that have been generous enough, thank you, that are contributing. But I ask to just steer you to my website, Rob Weber for Congress. That is a more efficient pathway on my end to receive contributions. And thank you so much. I am grateful. So on your note about the dynamic this year, you are right. The country is waking up. I strategically planned this. Whether it be informal planning, but this was on my radar. I actually had talked to some Congressman Jordan about my ideas several years ago. I knew, and I had a state rep race run so I could get some experience along the way in the in-between. But I targeted 2020 this year to run along with President Trump's reelection. I saw what was happening in the country. I saw what he was doing favorably. And I knew that there would be excitement and that this would be the year to challenge an incumbent. And then as 2020 has evolved, factors that were never foreseen, the COVID, the lawlessness, the police, you are right. Again, and Captor's been there forever. Even amongst independents and Democrats, there's this sentiment. She's had her chance. She's had the stage. It's time for change. And I'll tell you another one on it is, I believe, first of all, I have these values. Now, I was a leader. I was a soldier that led. I was a leader in the Army leading soldiers. I climbed around and crawled around in the mud for 9 years and got dirty. I come from a very working class family. My dad worked in a factory type environment as a lab technician. My mom was a part-time nurse at a hospital. And I have that upbringing. But I also believe that a congressman's duty is to their district, aside from issues of national security, of course. But what I mean by that is this, is most of the congressmen follow the money or chase the money, and it's usually the East and West Coast interests that control our country. High dollar, high profile, big money interests. I believe your duty is to your district. Inside Ohio's 9th district, it is a very manufacturing, union-heavy type of district. And I am, in fact, and I'm proud of it, hold myself out as a union supporting or relatively pro-union Republican conservative. I believe in supporting the American worker upon whose backs our country was built. And I will be that kind of leader. And so, again, it's my values anyway, but I believe that that is a congressman's duty. So, and I'm trying, and I am getting that message out that, and so that I'm really appealing not just to conservatives, but I'm appealing to all of the working men and women along the lake. And that is interesting. You say that the tide is changing. They want a champion. They want an advocate. The people want someone who will actually stand up for them, who cares. I think they want someone they can relate to, someone that's been in the real world, whether that be, for me, the service or just working in industry, as opposed to people that live sort of in the fantasy realm of politics, career politicians. I mean, Marcy Kaptur for 40 years has been in Congress. She's out of touch with the people, and the people have now woken up and realized that she does not relate with them at all.
Now, these career politicians in Washington or in the state capitals, they have absolutely no idea what it's like to be a normal person. They don't understand, you know, the rate of inflation and how people have to consistently scale down the quality of the food that they eat, or make sure that they're getting the lowest grade of gasoline, or searching around just to find the lowest price so that you can continue to get your car filled up, you know, or just cutting back on anything. You know, for a long time, I didn't make any additional money. Like, I mean, my wages were stuck at the same level, you know, from 10, 15 years prior to that. And it just gets harder and harder and harder to live. But meanwhile, you've got people in Washington, and every single year they get another $5, $10, $15, $20,000 raise. Of course they want to stick around. Of course they just want to continue to spin their wheels and stay in that office and not do anything to help people. You know, it's a disgusting thing. And Washington, in my opinion, needs a major overhaul. I want to ask you about term limits, but I want to talk to our first caller, Let's Get Real, and see what her question is. Let's Get Real, you want to go ahead and unmute your line, and you can ask Rob your question?
Hi, yes. I just wanted to commend Ron, his, values, and sorry, my dog's going nuts, and everything. And I guess it kind of went along with what you were saying. Redfield.
Mm-hmm.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yeah.
Oh, okay. It kind of went along with what you were saying about the food and whatnot. I'm just curious, what would your plan be, sir, as far as to clean up all the GMOs and all the bad stuff there, you know, the fluoride and everything they're putting bad in our foods that are killing us, basically, slowly? What would your plan be?
Yeah, so a big question, Rob. There's a lot of different things at play here, but I think that a lot of people have kind of felt for a while that large corporations don't care about the quality of ingredients they put in. There's a lot of artificial stuff that goes into our food, chemicals in basically everything, kind of contributing to an overall rate of sickness and low health well-being for Americans. And I can tell you from my personal experience, when I got my master's degree, my thesis was based on a study that I did on the efficacy of water fluoridation, so municipal water fluoridation. And we can talk about the results of it later. But, not everybody fluoridates their water, but this is something that really, I mean, you wouldn't want to spoon it into your mouth, and when it's put into your water and your food is cooked with water that's been fluoridated, there's no way to regulate the amount that you're putting into your body. Do you have any stance on just kind of maybe the overabundance of chemicals that are in everything that we consume and in all the products we use?
Well, what I would just say, I think it's a complicated or tricky question. It does go into our government agencies, the massive bureaucracies that are out there. And it's sort of an analogous thing of, you get inconsistent information. Our CDC is saying one thing in one day, and other agencies are saying another on this COVID deal. The food industry and the chemicals is similar. So we have to clean up and streamline the government regulatory bureaucracy. I think as far as the public goes,
totally agree.
Eating healthy, yeah, thank you. And thank you for the question. Eating healthy is expensive. What I would say is we have to start with educating the public so they're aware of, you obviously are these issues, but start with a public education, and through driving the bureaucratic administrative agencies of the government, create a culture where we can drive down the prices so it's more accessible, more affordable. Basically, the answer is if the consumer demands it, like some other countries in the world or some other regions in the world where non-GMO is almost standard. And I don't like comparing to Europe because Europe, frankly, is a disaster on almost all levels, but they are good on some of these health issues. If the consumer collectively demand it, then the supply system will provide it. And I think that's the best solution for it.
Yeah, we need to make our voices heard. Let's get real, and unfortunately, there's been like a dumbing down in America, though. They've destroyed the public school system. They have convinced people that it's better to eat all of this artificial stuff. I'm really shocked when I hear a new mother talk about, she can't wait to start bottle feeding a baby. It just seems to me second nature. Like Mother Nature gave us a method to feed your baby for free. Why wouldn't you want to go ahead and do that? But some people, they want to go right to the artificial stuff. And unfortunately, there's a lack of education, people have to eat, and when you only have, $10 a week to spend on food, unfortunately, a lot of people are going to go ahead and just eat off the McDonald's dollar menu or whatever it is.
Right. Right. And I just have kind of a second part of my question.
Okay, go ahead.
And that would be Big Pharma. It's a big issue, and I don't really know what we're going to do about it. But, HCQ can cure a lot of things. I just lost one of my best friends of 25 years.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. To cancer. And I think had she gotten on that, it's a cure for a lot of things, that, and there are some drops that I probably can't mention that people can use that cures a lot of things along with malaria. And I'm wondering why. I love our president. I stand behind him 100%, but I'm wondering why we're not getting that out there and why we're letting them dominate, the health industry still, even with this COVID situation.
Well, in my opinion, it's a very complicated issue because the Rockefeller Initiative kind of took over medicine in the early 20th century, maybe late 19th century. Early 20th century. And they went from a holistic approach to medicine to the allopathic approach to medicine, and that's where they brought in all of these chemical drugs, and they stopped putting the emphasis on treating people for cures and kind of treating people for symptoms. So I think that President Trump is actually in the midst of that kind of great unraveling that needs to take place. Going after the prescription drug industry, Big Pharma, with what he's just done to force them to give us lower drug prices, I think that that's going to be the first step in kind of going after them, because it's clear. In the same way that they have kind of held back with technological advances, say in like the automobile industry, they've also held back in advances for the healthcare industry, because there is no money. And when you look at it, there's no money in curing someone of something when you have an alternative and you can kind of keep them sick and treat it for, year after year after year. And that's just very unfortunate. Rob,
that's exactly what they're doing.
What do you think about, the money that's in Big Pharma lobbying? There clearly is a correlation between that money and the decisions that are made by our elected officials and, you know, what they allow to be done to us.
Well, so obviously what I would just say is our president just signed an executive order driving down the pharmaceutical prices. He wants to return the pharmaceutical industry to the United States via Puerto Rico and take it back from China. I also would just say that in a broader issue, we cannot be dependent on China for our essential supply chain. And yes, ma'am. A couple components of that is our medical system, medical devices, pharmaceuticals. And I'll just say this, China is not just our #1 economic competitor. They are also our #1, first and foremost, above all else combined, #1 geopolitical adversary. And so it is a national security issue. And we've seen it this year with having our supply chain controlled by a geopolitical adversary. We've got to stop that. So bringing pharmaceutical back to the United States should help on pricing. The president's doing that. And again, on all these, again, it's about legislators, representatives doing what's right for the people, for the constituents, as opposed to helping their friends and making money for big business.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
All right,
Right.
let's
We
get
need to
real.
have a red wave.
Let's get real. Thank you so much for your call and your question. I appreciate it.
God bless you both.
God bless you
Night.
as well. We'll talk to you soon. All right, good stuff. We've got 8 people waiting on the line. Let's see. We're going to go with Quips Defoe next, one of our Australian correspondents. We'll see what he has to say. Oh, Quips, go ahead and unmute, buddy. All right, and we've got 3,300 people here, 2,100 likes. If you guys wouldn't mind hitting like, perhaps sharing the show, I would certainly appreciate it. I'm sure that Rob would appreciate it too. Help us get the word out and break through that algorithm. Quips, what's up, buddy?
Not much, mate. How are you?
I am so good. I'm so good. Can't complain. I'm super excited to see the president tomorrow.
As I said, I am super jealous. Yeah. I can't believe you're getting this opportunity. I hope I get a glimpse of you on the camera.
Oh my God, yeah, please. Everybody be recording tomorrow.
So many screenshots. Yeah, no, I'm excited for you, my dude. I think that's going to be awesome.
I appreciate it.
But,
so what's on your mind?
Rob, I know I sound Australian, but I'm a dual citizen, so stakeholder, just up front. Good luck, first and foremost.
Thank you.
I like a lot of your positions. My specific question to you would be, I'm sorry if you addressed this in the first 15 to 20 minutes of the show, I missed it, but on the intelligence communities. I was wondering if you were for or against the decentralization of intelligence, basically, transparency amongst secrets.
Sure. What I think is that the way they've been run, I mean, it is clearly set up. These agencies can't be illicitly running operations through one another. They were set up with separate functions and separate purposes, and that is a unfortunate fallout or side effect from post 9/11 and the Patriot Act, where some information and intelligence was shared because there was, in hindsight, some intelligence that slipped through the cracks because of the separate nature of these agencies. But on the other hand, what I think has happened is that they went way too far, which always happens when the pendulum shifts. They went way too far in the other direction. And what inevitably happens, whenever you give the government power or control, and then the need that justified that power or control changes or goes away, the power is never given back. So another person besides Jim Jordan that I admire is actually my West Point classmate, who's a congressman near southwest Ohio or south central West Ohio, Warren Davidson. And he's a big advocate for Fourth and Fifth Amendment rights and privacy for individuals. And I follow that, and I would use him as my role model on those positions. And the government has gone way too far in invading individuals' privacy rights, and I am against that.
Okay, so, I mean, is it your position that intelligence agencies weren't doing anything illicit before 2001? Or, sorry, I just want to clarify that.
Well, obviously, so I just think the problem was exasperated post 9/11 and post Patriot Act.
Fair.
If you're referencing John F. Kennedy's splinter the CIA into 1,000 pieces type of thing, what I would just be able to comment on is just the bigger level. The swamp clearly needs drained. Lifelong bureaucrats need out. Even though I'm a West Point graduate and a military Army veteran, I am no friend of the military-industrial complex and sort of the neocon military types that want to drive our country into never-ending wars, and that the entire industry is based on that. So I fully support what our president is doing, is actually taking on and seeking peace, which he has created historic peace movements. And yes, obviously our intelligence apparatus is in the middle of advocating the opposite. And that's the kickback that you see against the president now, is those people for financial interest want to continue encouraging policies of war, and our president's trying to build peace.
Now, it's a big question. I don't expect an answer, but I was wondering, like, we're going to need legislators like yourself once the swamp is drained to make sure that it doesn't just refill, right? We need systematic answers and solutions to this problem to make sure it doesn't happen in the future. I was just wondering, are you specifically working on any policy positions or platforms that would work in that endeavor?
Specific to intelligence, is that the aspect you're focusing on?
Yeah, that's my that's
Sure.
my wheelhouse, I guess.
So what I would just say is this: is the swamp, the career bureaucrats, non-elected, but the swamp also includes, and frankly, I'm going to say something. It's both sides of the aisle.
Mm-hmm.
There are career politicians on the Republican and Democrats, not just Democrats. And I would say our country's best interest as a first step would be to turn the country entirely and safely red. But then I think the next step would be is there's a lot of corruption. There's been past corruption, names that we could, no names that I can't say or won't say, unspoken names, but have been corrupt on the right side of the aisle. So the swamp needs drained at all levels, and we need fresh, new, non-careerist blood in Congress and people who actually care. As far as the military, again, what I would just say is this: I believe in strong national defense, but I believe in preserving America's most precious, the blood of our young men and women, preserving that as a premium, only using our armed forces overseas if it's a direct link to a vital national interest. No more endless wars, no more fighting other people's wars, no more of all this periphery operations. So that is sort of my policy position, is I'm very much for peace. I'm very much for withdrawing, not entirely necessarily from Europe, but withdrawing significantly, allowing NATO to pay for itself, allowing the individual European nations to pay their own fair share, and getting out of the Middle East in a large degree, getting out of Afghanistan. And again, just focus on what's important to America's, that directly links to our vital national interests.
I think that's very important, that non-interventionalist sort of approach. I mean, speaking personally from my American side, it makes sense, and from my Australian side, as a member of the world community, it also makes sense. I don't see how anyone can complain about Trump removing military forces from the Middle East or anything like that, but they'll find a way, I'm sure.
Well, they have an economic interest in maintaining the business of war. I mean, unfortunately, it's a part of a lot of people's portfolios nowadays.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that the death and violence of people actually makes people money, but we'll change it. Anyway, Rob, like I said, once again, good luck. Thank you very much for your answers. They were candid and informative. And yeah, best of luck on your journey, Zach. Once again, so jealous. Have an amazing time, dude.
I'll talk to you later, Quips. Thanks for calling, brother.
No worries, anytime, bro.
All right, peace. All right, and I saw people in the chat saying that the information for the Zoom call was incorrect on the screen. I don't know how that happened, so I switched it up. I put the correct stuff back out there. Sorry for that. If anybody tried to call in, you can still go ahead and call in. Thank you very much for all the people we have on the line. We've got 7 more people besides J.R. Majewski, who's on the line. Once again, guys, also, I just wanted to mention that we still have that GoFundMe going for the event that we're doing on the 29th. It is a free event. If you can't donate or you don't want to and you just want to come to a free event, you're totally welcome to. But we are trying to cover the cost of the event itself. So there will be food provided there. There's going to be porta potties and a bunch of other amenities. So please do come. I would love to meet everybody. And don't forget, we're going to be streaming live. So maybe we'll interview you live on the air. JR, what happened? Where'd you go? All right, looks like we got disconnected. We'll bring him back when he gets in here. But my good friend Aaron Moriarty is the next caller. Aaron's always got great questions. Yes, Romney is a traitor. Sorry if anybody was confused about that. There's something I do want to ask you about. There's a little bit of a hubbub among the rhinos in the House and the Senate, and then also, of course, the Democrats, and then woke Twitter on the left is freaking out because we just lost an American icon, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, yesterday. I think she... between you and I don't know that it happened the way that they said, but they had to announce it right before the election. And obviously, President Trump is looking to fill that seat as early as next week with a new female SCOTUS. And the Democrats are not too happy about it. What do you think about President Trump putting that nomination forward?
So, are you asking Aaron or me? I apologize.
Oh, no, Aaron hadn't gotten on the line yet, so I was asking you. But, I mean, the idea that President Trump shouldn't put forth a nomination until after he wins in November, I think it's poppycock. He's the president. Go ahead and nominate whoever you want.
So the position, how I would advocate for this issue, and I have, 17 years as a trial lawyer, so a lot of experience, is the very rational, logical, and reasoned out position is this. The dynamic in 2016 on former President Obama's second term as a lame duck president and with the situation with the current Senate that was in opposition to his presidency, opposite party to his presidency, is very different in a technical matter than what's happening now. We have a first-term president who is seeking re-election. It's a very different dynamic. We also have a Senate that is in alignment as a Republican Senate with the president. As President Trump clearly said, one of the major, if not the most foremost reason why he was elected in 2016 was because of the upcoming predicted Supreme Court vacancies, as well as, frankly, the Senate is a very different body than the House of Rep. It's set up to be different. It's created in a different way. The terms are different, but one of the major duties it has is appointing not just federal judges, but particularly Supreme Court justices. So I believe in that dynamic. That is what the public put them there for, and that it is ripe for him to go ahead and make an announcement on who he's going to move forward with, and for the Senate to go forward with confirmation.
All right, great. Aaron is now on the line. Aaron, what's up, brother?
Hey, Red. Hi, Rob. How you guys doing? I'm doing fine.
Good. I'm doing excellent. I'm glad to have you here. So what's going on? What's on your mind?
Well, yeah, I had trouble getting online too here. I must have tried a dozen times, and you have to hit, after it says it's not valid, you have to hit join the meeting through your browser, and that seems to be working. Although I can't see myself, so I don't know what I look like.
Yeah. It's it looks like your camera's off, but we've got good quality audio.
Oh, my camera's off. I don't know how to fix that.
I can click Ask to Start Video, and it might prompt you to start your
Oh,
camera.
there it goes. There it goes.
Nothing yet. Could it be that you
Oh,
have?
there it is.
Could it be that you have another application open on your computer that might also be? Oh, there we are.
There we go.
Aaron,
There
it's
I am.
working.
All right.
All right. So yeah,
Well, Rob-
what's your question for Rob?
Well, I wish you a lot of luck in your running, and I hope that you sound like a very nice guy with good ideas. Um, um, the fluoride thing you brought up, I mean, I'm thinking about running for mayor in my town here just to get rid of the fluoride in the water. Maybe it has to be a mayor that does it. I don't know. That might be the case.
It's legislated at the local level. So yeah, I mean, it would have to be. Something that, you know, there would have to be a moratorium on it from, I guess, if at the federal level they said, you know, hey, nobody does this. But, you know, I mean, the problem that I found is that there's multiple chemical compositions that fall under the category of fluoridation. So there's a big difference between sodium fluoride, which is the dental product, which is in your toothpaste, and the commonly used fluoride additive to water, which is oh shoot, and I'm drawing a blank on it. It's like it's not, I keep wanting to say sulfur hexafluoride, but I hydrofluorosilicic acid. That's what it is. Hydrofluorosilicic acid. That is a byproduct of the aluminum smelting and the phosphate fertilizer industry. And what's so damaging about that is that it's toxic waste. I mean, the reason they started adding it to water is because they had barrels and barrels of it just sitting around. There's nothing they could do with it. So they got Congress to say that it could be added as a product that was the same as fluoride, but it's very different and it reacts differently in your body. And there is no there's no benefit to having that in your water. And what I did for my thesis was I took a look at like the top 50 industrialized nations, in the West and just all across the world. I did 2 sets of data, and the countries that fluoridated the water did not have a greater incidence of dental health than the countries that did not fluoridate their water. So it just doesn't make any sense to me, and it seems like they're getting one over on the American public. That's my opinion. Are you still there, Aaron? Did I talk you off?
Yeah, it sounds like it's an industry sweetheart deal that they have.
Yeah.
And that just has to be broken. And at whatever level, I think we all need to stand up, because I would not choose that to eat. I mean, my understanding is it eats right through the containers that it comes in. There's nothing that can really contain it. It's so toxic.
Yeah, yeah.
But
it also replaces calcium in your bones and in your teeth. The symptoms of skeletal fluorosis, which is, you know, as this takes over in your bones, is indistinguishable from osteoporosis. And we have an epidemic of osteoporosis, or, you know, what might be skeletal fluorosis in the country right now. So there's all kinds of health issues that come with it.
Okay. I also wanted to ask your listeners to say some prayers for my friend Catherine. I went to go check up on her, and I had to break into her window. She'd fallen.
Oh no!
And she was airlifted to the hospital. Yeah, so that's,
well, thank God you found her. Oh,
something else. But I know. Yeah, she might not be here right now if I hadn't have found her. So
yeah.
She's in Green Bay right now in a hospital, and she's doing a little better. But I also have my friend, new friend, Queenie Cuesta. This is Queenie Cuesta.
Aaron, you're starting to robot a little bit, Aaron.
So she wishes you luck in your.
Aaron, I think we're getting a bad connection, buddy. I'm gonna put you back into the waiting room, and let's try to reset that connection. And let me see. We're going to go back to gallery view, and we'll bring in our next caller. We've got JR, because he had an issue with his connection. We'll try to come back to Aaron in just a moment. Hopefully that'll work. But please, everyone, prayers for Catherine. Also prayers for Hey Jude. Her cat died this evening, and there's not too many things that are worse than losing a pet or a close friend or family member. But JR, what's going on, brother? How are you?
Hey, how are you guys?
I'm doing good.
There's not a patriot in this audience as excited as me to get you two great people together.
Oh, yeah, dude. Thank you very much for helping this get set up.
Hey, no problem. No problem. Rob deserves your audience.
How are you doing?
Hey, Rob. How are you, buddy? Nobody deserves your audience more than Rob, and nobody deserves Rob more than your audience. So I'm super happy. I had to run from. I was at a buddy's house. We had a whole bunch of people in the front room. We just got done cooking shrimp and lobster, celebrating, and
nice.
We were all watching you on YouTube. And then I, jumped in the golf cart and drove home, and got all ready. And then I hit the mute button too many times, and it disconnected me. So I apologize for that.
I'm telling you what, man. I can't wait to drive a golf cart when we get to your house.
Oh, I'm ready, buddy. We're gonna have a blast.
All right, so JR, being a constituent of Rob's, or at least at the very least a resident of Ohio, what is your biggest concern for the people of Ohio?
I really think Rob hit on everything that I have as big concerns. Rob and I have had numerous discussions, and like I've said when I've been on your show previously, Rob reached out to me just as a patriot, just as a guy that thought, this dude went out and made a statement and painted his lawn. And he reached out to me on Twitter at first and said, "Hey, can I buy some paint? Can I help you do that?" And the conversation graduated to, "Hey, how about I come over and we hang out and we just chat?" Right. So we did. And then it turned into me really liking him and volunteering to help him, wherever I could. And, we chat quite often. Rob will call me and I'll call him, and we'll both, I have a professional career, but I'm also trying to stay politically motivated to help people like him. So there's times where I'll call Rob and I'll say, "Oh man, I'd really like to do this," or, this MAGA meetup and get funding. He gives me some thoughts on that. And, in response, Rob will solicit me for some ideas on what I think as a constituent. So as far as the issues, I think Rob's on top of. I mean, I don't think you can throw anything at this man that he can't articulate, and with genuine thought. But what I like to say that I keep hearing, and I hear it more and more, Rob's the kind of guy that you want in politics for their career. Mm-hmm. And I keep hearing a lot about no career politicians. But Rob's the kind of guy that I would have no reservations with allowing him to go in to politics. He's a little bit older than us, and it's not easy for a man to hang up their robes and run into politics and then think that they can just come back to the commercial world, if you will. But where I go with that is I hear a lot about term limits, and I'm big for term limits as it stands right now. But like I said on your show before, we really need to make it easier for guys like me, yourself, and Rob, because I watch Rob out here campaigning. It's hard for a guy like him to raise funding when you have someone like Marcy Kaptur, who's preyed on the community for 35 years, that can raise $7 million in her sleep. Yeah. And Rob struggles for a couple $1,000s. And I don't think you've broached the subject yet, but I would be curious, and I'm not going to put Rob on the spot, but I know for a fact the man's funding a lot of the campaign himself.
Really?
And that's not what America should be about. That's what bothers me the most about it.
That's honestly one of the things that bothers me the most about American politics too. I mean, when you've got a career politician like Marcy Kaptur, somebody with nearly 4 decades in office, she's made so many connections by this point. All she has to do is make a call, somebody writes her a check, or they call, 15, 20 of their richest friends, and there you go, her campaign's taken care of. They buy commercials, they buy mailers, and they just try to drown you out and, use that money. And meanwhile, we have somebody here who's genuine about the issues and the people that they're trying to represent, and you have to go through the process of trying to break in And, you know, I mean, people don't necessarily have the money to put into a campaign. You know, I mean, you don't have the connections to the corporations and stuff.
Right. And not to mention, I know these aren't opinions of Rob's that were shared with me, because I'm only stating that because I just explained how much we talk. But, you know, I see this as a man watching from the outside. But, you know, Rob can't even solicit these larger businesses and functions that are notoriously conservative because Marcy Kaptur has her hooks in. So when we talk about our own party, you know, I've shared with you in confidence and with Rob, when I went to Clyde for the president's visit in the motorcade, we had a heck of a time getting, you know, the president's team to recognize that Rob was running for Congress. And I did. Now, when I say we, I'm saying me and my friends, not Rob. Rob was actually out campaigning, but, you know, the shame in that was that Ohio's Republican Party, and those that are aware and that will allow Rob to come to their event so they can get more people to, you know, to be in attendance, they're not willing to step up to the plate to get Rob onto the docket and to get Rob to shake the president's hand. And we all know that the president's a busy man. He doesn't necessarily have on the forefront of his mind that Rob Weber is running for Congress. That's the job of his staff.
Yeah.
And I found personally roadblocks at various levels in our Ohio government and those in the federal government that I advocated that Rob take my place at the motorcade, or Rob do. I'm just a regular dude. I didn't know he couldn't do all these things, but, you know, that's the kind of effort I had to put into it. And it's just a shame. He has the most important seat in our state right now.
Rob, that's shocking to hear. I mean, I would imagine that the Republican Party of Ohio, I mean, it would be in their best interest for you to beat Marcy Kaptur. I mean, why do they not have your back?
Well, what I would say is this. It's a multi-factor answer or situation, but I am an outsider. I'm a proud non-political outsider. I am anti-establishment. But what I would say is this: it's the dynamic that I alluded to earlier about, again, and they know it's about whether they can control you, whether you'll come to heel to them or not. And not that I'm some right-wing lunatic. You know, I have not held myself out as that, and people that know me know I'm not that. But they know. I mean, you don't go to West Point, serve in the Army, and do the things I've done to be a yes man. And I think that scares both sides. I also think that there is such a thing as an establishment on both sides, and an established opposition that's a Democrat that they know what they're going to do and can certainly control and buy, maybe is safer than an outsider who they don't know. But it goes also to what I said earlier. It's just, and these districts were drawn, they're created to be either Republican or Democrat. There isn't much room for competition. That's intentionally done. The gerrymandering. This district, admittedly, was drawn by Republicans. It pitted two longtime Democrat, Marcy Kaptur and another gentleman, to eliminate one of them. So the Republicans are at fault for that. But when the Democrats controlled that process, they did the same thing. I'm against gerrymandering no matter who's in charge. But, you know, it's that idea that to flip the House, it means you have to elect people that are running against Democrats. You can't fanboy, and God bless the, you know, your Jim Jordans, your famous people, you know, your Rand Pauls, you know, it's the Senate, but you get my point, the famous people. You've got to help underdogs. You've got to help outsiders, because, again, without controlling the House, the president's policies will not get enacted into law. And our superheroes, Devin Nunes and Jim Jordan, and, you know, when Mark Meadows was in the House, they're not going to get anything done unless we control the House. So it's just that system, it's that dynamic that tends to keep outside candidates on the outside looking in. And so we need to beat them with grassroots. We need the public to stand up and say, enough is enough. I'm tired of the games. I'm tired of the careerism. I'm tired of the self-serving instead of selfless service, and put new people who are qualified, that have a background of credentials, that have professional and academic life experience and have shown themselves and put themselves out in the middle of it, in the battlefield, if you will, and clean out Congress in general. And we need people brave enough. I'm putting myself out there, but we need supporters who are brave enough to do the same thing.
Yeah, I agree with you. JR, do you got a follow-up? We've still got 5 people on the line and 12 minutes left.
No, I think, Rob, we've had these discussions numerous times. Like I said, I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to have met you two, the both of you.
Likewise.
Painting the lawn has taken me on a great path, and I pray every day that it continues, because I'm happier than a pig and you know what. So thank you guys, and God bless you, both of you.
God bless you
I'm
too,
so
JR.
happy that you guys are talking. So
thanks for
God
calling in,
bless everybody
brother.
in the chat.
Appreciate you. We'll talk to you soon.
Right. Thanks, dudes.
Yep.
It's a great honor to be speaking with another fellow patriot like JR. And patriots like myself and all of us need to stick together, because our country was founded by patriots, and that movement is happening again in our country right now. We've got to support one another.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. All right. Well, we're waiting for Jessica's audio to connect. So in the meantime, we will also bring in Presley, and we'll just see whose microphone is the first to connect. And it looks like we're waiting for both. Okay, so we got 3,200 people here still, 2,600 likes. You guys, please do consider leaving a like. And we've got just about 10 minutes left before we are going to be closing out the night. If you guys do want to call in, it looks like we're going to be able to get to everybody tonight, just as long as the microphones keep working. Let's go ahead and try Alexandria Occasional Cortex. This is not Alexandria Occasional Cortez. This is a close friend of the program. Okay, Jessica, go ahead and unmute your microphone, and we can get your question or comment for Rob. How are you, Jessica?
I'm good, thanks.
Excellent, excellent. What's on your mind tonight?
So if there is I guess I would say a company in Ohio.
Howdy. How you guys doing?
AOC, we'll be with you in just a second, buddy. Okay, go ahead, Jessica.
So there's a company in Ohio that is responsible for providing Google Classroom. I guess the program or documents that teachers use in the schools in different areas, in other states also, not just Ohio. Or there's like Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Indiana. But who would be in charge of overseeing a company that provides the Google Classroom information, especially with Google being, biased? And then, these people are, I think, listed as even independent. Working with Google Classroom, they're independent, almost like contractors. And then I think the content, like I've tried to trace it a little bit, links to some very odd websites that have explicit information or CCP dialogue, all the stuff with the Department of Education, like the changes in the curriculum and stuff like that. So it's a hard question to word, but I just don't know who would oversee someone who provides Google Classroom to the schools.
Yeah, Rob, I mean, you've got your, federal board of education, you've got a state board of education, you've got, local, like county boards of education. I mean, where do we start with this stuff? President Trump initiating this 1776 initiative, I think that's a great place to start, getting back to teaching patriotism in schools. But again, this is a larger issue.
So my understanding, and this is definitely much more controlled at the state level and down into local, but in Ohio we have a board of education, and I don't know how many members, but 20 or 30 members across the state. Actually, it might be 33. It matches the number of state senators we have, and they largely are involved in curriculum approval and mandates like this. They're responsible. They just passed. I might get the name, the number wrong, but I think it's the 1619 initiative that talks about, indoctrinates our students with sort of white privilege and whatnot. So it's at those levels. what we have to do, and you're right, there's a lot of stuff being fed into our education system that's a disaster. Again, I think it's the consumer, us, the community. We have to be vocal. We have to speak up. This idea that these teachers don't want parents watching the virtual classroom, that's garbage and ridiculous. We need to be voices for it, and we see something.
Yeah, because that's a major problem in my community, is that the school board itself of our local school has changed dramatically over the summer, and they've pushed out a lot of conservative Christian Republican people, and now they have a majority rules vote, and they've also done a lot of strange activity in hiring and furloughing people and money issues, and I mean it's just and it just keeps going. I mean, if you even went on our local school, like Facebook page, like people just blow it up every day with a new problem, and I am under Governor Wolf's dictatorship, so that's a problem as well. But I feel like the board is kind of blocking the citizens, and we're not sure where to go. I've reached out to a couple of different state representatives, and I've also reached out to even the county district attorney, and I'm not sure if and what he has ever got to look into, but I don't want to pester one person in particular with the problem. But if you feel like the board is somewhat nefarious, and then you are told to maybe go to the board, I mean, what are you supposed to do? You're like up against, what are you supposed to do? Just protest? But then who would help you even if you protested,
Yeah.
So what I would respond by is, it's a tricky problem. It's a non-glorious position, but the state school board and these local district boards, vitally important elected official positions with very little, if not any, compensation. But that's the reality. There's this phrase out there, I don't really know where it comes from, but this is not an invasion, it's an infiltration.
Absolutely.
And our school system has been infiltrated entirely. It's because good people like ourselves have not stepped up to the plate and made the sacrifice to put themselves on a school board to ensure that the curriculum is not garbage, to ensure that these extreme policies aren't being jammed into our children's down their throats. The other component, but with that being said, that is our republic and democratic process, is if you're on the wrong end of that, one, try to encourage people to get involved and elect proper officials.
Yeah.
But the other one, I'm a huge proponent for school choice. I will support that. I believe in federal funding for it. And so if you find yourself on the wrong end of that situation, the answer is to get out of it through school choice and lots of different options. And I'm a major advocate, meaning not just promoting it, but advocate as in financial incentives. That's the wrong word, but financial coming back to parents who choose options. And I support that entirely.
Yeah, so not to keep you, but the newest problem we have with our local school is that they're saying they're thinking about doing away with any type of online education that they're allowing the students to use. So, I mean, I don't know if they're saying we're going to force all students to physically attend the school, even though we don't want to. Like, some of our kids don't want to go to a school that has to wear masks 24/7 and all the strange, plastic boxes they make them sit inside, and but so that's the newest thing as of Friday afternoon. They like to dump these crazy ideas on us Friday afternoon, and then everybody's pissed off, pardon my language, over the weekend, and we have no way to contact anybody to even voice our anger or ask questions because now it's the weekend. So they do this constantly, and now they're saying that they're going to have a Zoom style board meeting on Monday at 2 p.m. And I've seen a lot of teachers are complaining because they said, well, that's during our work day. Technically, we can't attend the meeting, because Monday at 2 p.m. they would be teaching school. And then a lot of the parents work still, and they say, well, now we can't attend this meeting about these problems. So they find ways to put walls up against us to even be trying to be part of of the solution.
It's definitely a plan, Jessica. Well, listen, I appreciate your call and I appreciate your comments, but we've only got 2 minutes left and we got to get to this last caller, okay?
All right, thanks for the time.
Yes, thank you for calling. Have a great night.
You too.
All right, here we go with Alexandria Occasional Cortex. Go ahead and unmute AOC. What's going on, my friend? How are you?
Oh, fantastic. I'll be uber quick since don't have much time, but
go ahead.
2 questions. Would you all be supportive with all the statues have been torn down with this idea of erecting statues of Pepe the Frog in all federal lands to celebrate?
I would support that.
Okay, put a little frog emoji in chat if you agree with that.
Yeah. Frog emoji in the chat if you're interested in a Pepe statue. Okay, what's your other question?
And also, if people there local, hopefully you, know where to go to get a good cup of coffee in the greater Sandusky area next week, because I hit the golden buzzer. I'm going to Ohio.
Right, there you go. I know about Cedar Point, but that's about the extent of my knowledge about Sandusky. So where's a good place to go, Rob?
Well, there's lots of choices. You can't go wrong, but and that area is well developed because of Cedar Point activity. So I can't steer you to a specific one, but you can choose. And as far as the other comment, I don't know what that is, but I do know this. I would support putting up statues of Minutemen, Patriots, and Patriot statues would really work right about now, and people that are midnight riders are people that should be commended.
Beautiful.
Hallelujah.
I love it. I love it.
And
All right,
I can't
AOC.
wait to meet both of you next week.
Yeah, man, we'll be here. Don't forget, tomorrow at 7 for Comfy Sunday.
All right.
All right, brother. We'll talk to you soon. All right, awesome. Well, once again, I just want to remind everybody, Rob Weber for Congress. You can go ahead to the website in the description below. His Twitter and his Facebook are also down there. Rob, thank you so much for being here. Thank you to everybody who participated in the show. Thank you for all the great questions. I want to give you the last word. Go ahead. What do you want the audience to be left with?
Well, just very grateful to be on this. It's a true honor. Really need lots of support. If you're willing to make the contribution, go to robweberforcongress.com, and more than just make the contribution, learn about me, see my background. I'm kind of a reserved guy. I don't like talking about myself, but the background is on there. You can really learn that I'm truly experienced and qualified and educated for this, that I've got the 30 years of life experience to put myself in this position now to go try to serve our public. So that's all. And I am doing this for the right reasons, the right intent, to try to serve our country, save our great republic, and stop this coup that's happening. We don't want to lose our country this year. If we lose and Joe Biden's the president and they take the Senate, we will lose our country. So any support you can give, I would be tremendously grateful. Thank you, Zach, for having me.
It was my pleasure. Thanks again for being here. Obviously, we're going to be staying in touch. So you guys, if you want to go ahead and check out the event on the 29th, I just dropped the link in there. Maybe you can show up and shake Rob's hand in person. And I look forward to having you back on the show so that we can get an update. Hopefully, we've got some good news coming up with this upcoming election. All right, everybody, Midnight Riders, good luck and God bless. We'll see you tomorrow at 7 for Comfy Sunday. Remember, Adam Krigler from the Adamcast IRL podcast is going to be my guest with Methods. Good luck and God bless.